there's a series of novels, fantasy novels, that were published in the 80s that are quite the favorite among a certain sector or a sector of fantasy fans. And I think I bought, I think there's 7 books or something, but I bought the first 3, and there was only one reason I bought the first 3. It was one of the very few times in my life I've actually been to a science fiction and fantasy convention. I can number that event that on like 2 fingers, I think. This was one of them. And I ended up very much by chance at an author's table with his books on his table. I don't like to see an author sitting there alone. And he wasn't wretched looking or anything. And I recognized it. I'd seen the books on the bookshelves. They were the Black Company novels by Glenn Cook.
Glenn Cook.
And this is Glenn Cook sitting there.
Oh, cool.
And I haven't really read the books, right?
Yeah.
And I'm interested because they look kind of badass, and I'm a big fan of Carl Edward Wagner's Kane books, which are really balls to the wall and very unpretentious acid trip, bloody fantasy. And if you squint, the Black Company books look like they might kind of be in that zone. And I was like, okay. So looked, he, quick on the draw, signed the first 3 books in the series for me and continued, began a conversation pretty much in, front loading the fact that now I had to buy them. He was pretty good at it, actually. And I saw this and I was a little miffed. I was kind of like, might have bought the first one if I had, thought about it, but I hadn't even got to that point. Here I was, here you go, signed, here you go, kind of thing. And you're like, what are you going to do?
Right.
So I was kind of like, oh, fuck, you just got $15 off me. All right. But that aside, having now, quote, invested in this, I figured I'd talk to the guy. And he's chatty.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm speaking to a professional science fiction author, fantasy author. There are, of course, 100 in earshot, but this is the one I have. Let's talk.
Yeah.
So, I talked a little bit, and one thing that he was very forthcoming about, maybe I asked the right question, I don't remember, but he was very forthcoming about the fact that he had written one Black Company novel. And he finished it. He ended it. It's a self-contained novel.
Right.
And he killed off his uber badass character who, if you can stand it, Justin, dressed all in black and was named Raven.
God.
Okay, it's the mid-'80s, right? Just letting you know. And he killed him off and meant it. That was the end of the story. The editor offered him more money. He said, oh, fuck. Came up with a bullshit way for Raven to come back and wrote another novel. And then telling it almost like it's a joke. And then he did it again. And it was kind of odd, having just spent money on these.
Right.
Being told that the author really had not produced them in the sense of enthusiasm for where the story had led him. And then, like a sorcerer kicker, saying, wow, I could do something with these guys again, given where they have come. No, that's not what was going on at all. There were a few other interesting points, perhaps not the same, but not unrelated, which is that Gene Wolfe, an author whom I very much value, that Gene Wolfe and I interacted a number of times. He was in Chicago and was very nice and came to lots of events and gave talks and stuff like that. So you could go and listen to Gene Wolfe give a lecture and talk to him afterward. He was really, really nice to everybody. And so I learned a lot about his thoughts on his books. And he said that he had conceived of the Book of the New Sun as a trilogy, and that he that he and the editor had basically agreed as he was doing the third one that it would be split in two. He said that he did that because he loved this one sequence where all these injured soldiers were sitting around in an infirmary telling stories to each other. And it really wasn't very plot worthy in terms of the big epic, but he loved it and thought it, and he loved writing it, and said, I'm going to, I want this in here. And the editor says, well, if you do that, then basically you've got yourself, you've got yourself a book that's twice as, as big as the first two. So let's chop it. And so that entailed some rewriting and some making up new stuff and stuff like that to try and make it fit. That's not a dreadful thing, right? I mean, he was doing it out of love, apparently. He loved the work he was doing on that one thing. And why not? The story had brought him to the point where it made a lot of sense for the hero to reflect upon all these stories that everybody was telling, and it was important to him as a creator. So that's a little different. I mean, at that point, tetralogies were all the rage. Everyone had discovered, trilogies were so 70s now. And so it's all becoming tetralogies now. And you can kind of, and I'm cynical enough to think that the editor was like, why sell 3 books when I can sell 4?
Yeah.
And instead of what he might have done 10 years ago, which is say, Gene, shut up, publish the stories as a little spin-off book sometime. Stories from Severian's, wartime recovery, whatever.
Right.
We'll make a little spin-off book of your fucking stories that your characters are telling each other for no reason.
Right.
Get back to work. Pump out book 3. You know the length. We've talked about what's in it. You said you were going to do it. Do it. Shelve those other things and send me that manuscript when you're done.
Yeah. We
want a trilogy. We promised a trilogy. They're getting a trilogy. We've sized the box for the trilogy that all the books will fit into.
Right.
Shut the fuck up. I'm the editor.
Right.
But this is 10 years later, and the editor's like, tetralogy. Right? That's what we should be doing here. And so that's the cynical side of me saying that there are other elements besides just Gene Wolfe's love of these particular scenes.
Right.
I can think of several other instances where the Gene Wolfe situation was very, very similar, where the creator is pretty blunt that they actually really quite disliked their main character, after the second rep. And the character was basically, bloated on hot gas to make him walk again. And the creator was heartily sick of the character and of everybody who liked him.
Right.
Heartily sick of the fan base, and really, really, really would rather be writing different stories. And you can see in a lot of fantasy series, I think, from the 80s and the 90s, that decay of enthusiasm,
right,
and the repetition of the characterization rather than its development. There are plenty of reasons not to play for a long time.
Yeah.
The question is whether you can come up with a reason to do it, and then, given that reason, a way so that it is integrated into a re-inspiration cycle of its own.